In this episode of the Awaken Podcast, we are going deep on how you can stop settling for less and finally raise your self-worth. We know that having low self-worth costs us big time. We can miss out on opportunities. We can block our blessings. We can feel unworthy to receive love and joy and go all in on the life that we actually deep down desire. The scariest part of all of this is that we can be lying to ourselves about what we're capable of and what's possible when we don't believe we're worthy of letting it in. This podcast is going to be super unfiltered. We're going to share vulnerable stories that we've never shared publicly before about our personal struggles with low self-worth, what that led to, how it cost us our well-being, abundance, happiness, connection, and so much more, and then how we've overcome it to create the life that we have now. This is not just a conversation about self-worth that's addressing it from a mindset level or how you can be more materially successful. This is going to be a deeply spiritual conversation about your worth as a child of this universe, God, and creation. So let's dive into it, get comfy, and let's raise our self-worth together. Welcome to the Awaken Podcast,
where we share practical spirituality for modern living.
Join us as we dive deep into conversations about healing and transformation.
Let's go. Let's go.
Here we go.
I'm excited.
I'm so excited for this one.
Got our cacao.
I'm a little bit cold, but I've got a warm drink, so I'm very happy about that.
If you're at home, join us with a cacao, a matcha, a tea, a coffee, whatever you got.
I'm doing herbal tea today.
Nice. I'm doing cacao. I'm getting lit.
You're staying true to the tradition.
Yeah. So you know how we do it. We like to take a nice deep mindful breath and set our intentions. So closing down your eyes, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. What's your intentions today, Hella?
My intention is to inspire people who are listening to leave this conversation feeling that raising their self-worth is doable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I can do this and I can see why. It doesn't feel like this big abstract thing.
Yeah. I want to remind people that they're worthy of raising their self-worth. For me, it's something that I struggled with growing up. So I want to talk into my personal lived experience and try and inspire and motivate and uplift.
Love that.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yum. The cacao be hitting today. So good.
I'm feeling the tea.
Nice.
I'm enjoying it.
So where would you like to start this conversation?
Okay, so where I want to start is just to acknowledge that you and I have both journeyed through this.
By journeyed through it, I think you mean struggled through it.
Yeah.
For many, many, many years.
We both had really low self-worth for a very long time. And you and I have been together for 18 years now. And when we met, my self-worth was pretty rock bottom.
Same.
Yeah. Now that I think back, we were both right there. It was hard. So I think that could be a cool place for us to start, is just painting the picture a little bit more about.
It manifested for us through body image is one of the big ways it showed up. We were really self-conscious. Both of us were.
I think you were more than me at
you
that
were
time.
Definitely really self-conscious.
No, I'm not saying I wasn't, but yours was way more severe.
I think
I had other areas that were more, definitely skin was a thing for me at that time. Like I was very identified with having acne. That caused me a ton of suffering. But I remember for you, body specifically, that you were like pretty obsessed with this identity of feeling unworthy and self-conscious and not good enough all the time. Like it would control you.
No, it was my identity at that time. It was my self-concept, which we talked about, in the last podcast. For me, it was all I knew. So when I looked in the mirror, I would identify the things I didn't like about my body, specifically being overweight And for me, that would manifest by looking at my stomach. And I really hated my stomach. I hated the body fat on my stomach. And I was really embarrassed and really ashamed that I was living in this overweight body. And I was kind of desperate to do something about it, but also trapped in a cycle of emotional eating and not even knowing at that time about the stress response and about regulating my nervous system. And I didn't really have any tools. All I knew is that food made me feel better. So I was kind of trapped in that cycle.
One thing that I want to point out right now is the difference between low self-worth and low self-esteem, because what you're describing could be interpreted as having low self-esteem, which is quite a conditional experience. For example, okay, I've got low self-esteem right now because I've got acne breakouts, or I feel overweight and I don't feel confident in my body, so it's affecting how I'm showing up and expressing myself. But you could still have a foundation of high self-worth where you believe that you're worthy of more.
I didn't have that.
So that's what I want to distinguish here. Let's talk about your sense of worthiness. How did that affect your life?
I felt unworthy of love.
Of love.
I felt unworthy to receive love. I felt unworthy to give love. I felt like I just wasn't enough. That was the dominating belief system. I wasn't enough and I wasn't worthy. I wasn't worthy of creating my dreams into reality. I wasn't worthy of having a great relationship. I was embarrassed around how I looked. So, how we feel on the inside is how we show up in the world.
And were there things that you would hold back on or sabotage as a result of that belief?
I never felt free within my body. I was constantly self-conscious of how I looked, and I'd try and mask that with different coping mechanisms and different ways that I'd show up in the world. But underneath it all, I was really insecure. And this started for me at a really young age because all I knew was being overweight. As early as I can remember, like 9 years old, I was really overweight. So I started forming this identity of being really insecure and self-conscious in my body. And I know a lot of people go through this, and it might not be body image stuff. It might be something else where you just have this belief that you're not enough or you're not worthy. It's such a common thing.
I think a big part of this too is feeling unworthy of taking up space and being seen. You mentioned about not feeling worthy of love. For me as well, it was feeling unworthy of taking up space, being visible, and assuming that I was unworthy of acceptance, which led me to take measures to protect myself and prevent rejection before it had even happened. So I would be hypervigilant all the time, especially in social situations, interacting with other humans, assuming that I was about to be rejected. And so I would go out of my way to prevent that from happening by kind of doing it first, doing it to myself first. I would keep people at a distance. I wouldn't allow people to see me without makeup on. Instead of laughing with my mouth open because I had crooked teeth, I would always cover my mouth.
Yeah, I remember that was like a pain point for you, your teeth.
Yeah, it was a huge
You would
thing.
never smile, which is so sad to think about.
So sad. Yeah, I remember when I eventually got dental work done, one of the biggest things was not feeling prettier. It was feeling free to smile. That was life-changing.
Yeah.
To just smile without worrying and being on edge. Because every time I would feel happy, it's like it would be connected to fear, which is so heavy and such a source of suffering. Anyway, so for me with worthiness, I remember one of the biggest sources of low self-worth for me was connected into my upbringing and the breakup between my mum and dad.
So you're going back to where this kind of started.
Yes.
This
and I
limiting
think that
belief.
these roots are really important to acknowledge, because we can think, oh, why do I feel this way? Or is this just a part of the human condition? And yeah, sure, like a lot of people do have low self-worth, but often there are root traumas or defining moments that have shaped how we feel about ourselves. And for me personally, I internalized blame for a lot of things in my childhood. And we talk about what we make things mean, right? There's what happens, and then we make it mean something. And sometimes we make it mean something that empowers us, and sometimes we make it mean something that really disempowers us.
Yeah,
and
that's a really key distinction. So there's what happens, and then there's what we make it mean.
Yeah.
Which is two totally different things.
Yeah.
So that's really good to acknowledge. And what you said about defining moments is key. I think we should break that down after you've shared more about your story.
Yeah. Well, for me, I just remember that when my parents broke up, I internalized so much of the shame about that happening. And during that process of them breaking up, which took several years to fully complete, there was fighting, there was conflict, as is often the case when people break up in a kind of tumultuous way. So I was witnessing a lot of arguments, a lot of conflict, a lot of insults. And when I would hear insults directed at one of my parents, I internalized that as if it was also being directed toward me. So, for example, I remember certain things that were said about my mum that I took to mean, well, if she's being judged like that, then I must be that too. If people perceive her that way, then I'm her daughter. I must be like that too. And I didn't realize it at the time. This is all just happening.
Yeah, it's kind of planting a seed within your subconscious mind, and you're forming an identity around that.
Yeah. And shout out to my mum. She is very strong-minded and outspoken, and I feel like I got that from her. And it was the too much wound. So when someone is in conflict with a strong woman, one of the things that we see in our society, you know, this very patriarchal society, is the too much woman is the problem, is hysterical, is over the top, is crazy, like all of these things. And so hearing those types of judgments, I became afraid of being too much and being perceived as crazy or unhinged or over the top or whatever. And I became more filtered. And I assumed people were judging me.
Yeah, so I want to break this down for everyone listening, what you're speaking about, which is, I think, a huge key to breaking free is understanding how these things develop. So you mentioned defining moments, which we all go through, and a defining moment could be something that's positive or it could be something that's negative. And defining moments start to shape our perception of who we think we are, what we think we're capable of, what we think we're worthy of, and what we think we can accomplish. The way we're programmed as children really affects every aspect of how we are as adults.
Well, it's shaping our framework of reality. And I think another really important part of this is to understand that your childhood is creating a map of what's safe and what isn't.
And if you think about a young child who comes into the world full of possibilities, just learning about life and existence, and their natural tendency is to discover and to try new things. You think about it from a parent's perspective, and they're trying to keep their kids safe. So they're like, don't touch that. Don't do that. Don't. And really it's coming from a protective place. But how the child might internalize that is every time I try to do something new, or I try to figure out something, or I, try to explore, I'm met with this resistance, I'm met with this judgment, I'm met with this mum or dad raising their voice. I feel unsafe in that moment because, as we know, anything that blocks the flow of love coming to the child can be perceived as frightening in the moment. because they don't really understand what's happening. All they understand is the reaction that's coming at them, but they don't have the capacity to understand why. They don't know that the parent's trying to protect them from hurting themselves. So they can internalize it as in every time I go to do something, I'm told off. It must mean that I'm not capable. It must mean that I'm not good enough. It must mean that there's something wrong with me. So often there's what happens, like you said, and then there's the meaning that we place upon it. And for a lot of kids developing, we internalize these things. So if a parent yells at us, if someone bullies us, if something happens that's more negative in nature, we can internalize it. We can create these internal narratives and meanings about ourselves that are limiting and disempowering in nature. So this is how it all starts. And it might not be from a trauma. It could be from something that was innocent in the moment, that came from love. It came from wanting to protect the person or the child, but it came out in a really harsh, strong way.
Well, there's also the intergenerational patterning. And that's another thing that I've seen play out in my family, in your family, and in pretty much every client that we have. This is not just special to us. There are patterns that our parents have that they demonstrated to us when we were children, and they may not even know why they do it.
They might not even be aware that they do it. It might be something that's unconscious that they just automatically do, and they don't necessarily think much about it because they've always done it, or they've done it for so long that it's just a part of their program. It's just a part of what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And so along with that map that we are creating as children within our minds of what's safe and what's not safe to do and to be, a part of that is the normalization of certain behaviors and ways of thinking. And it can come up in how we relate to money, how we eat, how we think about creativity, self-expression, career, relationships. For example, some households normalize arguments, conflict, fighting. I know other families that would never fight in front of their children with doors open. You know, they would keep that very private and separate. These are common and distinct differences. Another really common one is some households will say, finish the food on your plate. Other households will say, stop eating when you're full. Stop eating when you've had enough. Stop eating when you're 80% full. And that's just the beginning of it. I know that for myself and also for you, there have also been ways that our parents have had low self-worth, and we've normalized that way of being and thinking.
Yeah. I want to go back and share a little bit about my story.
Yeah, do.
Listeners will probably be aware of this because I've said the story many times before, but I'm going to add some new aspects in that I haven't spoken about in this podcast and how it related to my body image. So I've spoken about when I was young, when I was 7 years old, my dad was struggling with his mental health and he ended up taking his life. So what I haven't spoken about is how he took his life. He shot himself in his stomach. And when that happened as a 7-year-old, I internalized a lot, and I felt like I was so connected to my father empathically that I could sense and feel his pain. So I took on board his pain unconsciously. I didn't know as a child that's what I was doing.
And no doubt about it, these dots connected later. You weren't aware in the moment that that's what you were doing.
No. So as a young child, all I knew is that I was feeling a lot, so much. And I knew that every time that I'd turn to food, I'd feel better for a moment. It would give me this temporary sense of relief.
Well, one of the things that we've even spoken about is that sensation. Sometimes when you eat food, it's like receiving a hug. And that young boy probably really just needed a hug from his dad.
Yeah, so dad wasn't around anymore. You can imagine it takes a lot to get to that point where you're willing to take yourself out by shooting yourself.
Right. There's definitely a buildup of emotions, of depression, feeling helpless and hopeless, and reaching that breaking point.
Yeah, so I took on board all of that, and then I would look in the mirror and I would look at my stomach that as a kid was gaining weight because I was emotionally eating, and I'd pull all of that self-hatred into my body. and I would speak negatively towards myself. And this was happening, from a really young age. And it just kept going and developing, and my sense of self became more negative. And that was what I was developing. That's what I was creating, even though in the moment I didn't know that that's what I was doing. But over time, that became habitual. It became this way of operating. I'd get up, I'd look in the mirror, I'd talk badly to myself, I'd look at my stomach, I'd hate myself, I'd feel insecure, I'd judge myself, and I'd feel a lot of shame for being in the body that I was in. And I had no idea at the time of what I was actually creating. And it was creating a lot of harm. And definitely low self-esteem was affecting every area of how I was showing up.
And then how did you start to unravel this and heal? Let's talk about that, because clearly you've come such a long way. And
yeah, I want to say that this is something that I don't struggle with anymore.
Exactly.
So this is something that I struggled with when I was growing up, and I struggled with it for many, 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 many years. It's something that I've been able to break free of.
So if you were to go back and talk to your past self and say, here is what I'd recommend, like if your past self was listening to this podcast.
Honestly, I wasn't ready. It was something I had to journey through. It was something that I had to grow through. It wouldn't have resonated at that time because I didn't have the awareness, the consciousness to take on board something that someone was saying, because the negative belief systems were too strong.
So what changed that? Because clearly there was a point where you became open. What was the catalyst?
It was gradual. It was super gradual, really slow. And it was something that just gradually unfolded over a period of years.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with positive self-talk, with affirmations. And at first, when I'd look in the mirror and I'd say these positive affirmations, I didn't believe them at all. Like not even 1%.
And where did you hear about affirmations?
My mum. So as I was growing up and this was unfolding for me, my mum would put positive affirmations all around the house, and she'd make art out of positive affirmations. So shout out to mum, because she was planting something else, even though there was this part of me that was being fueled by all of this inner turmoil and chaos and hatred that I had towards myself. Mum was also putting up these affirmations around the house, and I didn't think too much about it at the time. They were just something that was there. But when I was a teenager, I would start to work with these affirmations. And like I said, I really didn't believe them. I truly didn't, because I was so indoctrinated into the negative way of perceiving myself. So I would just say it as something to do, and it wouldn't really help. It wouldn't really do much at all. But I just stuck with it. And then over time, like I'm talking years, I did start to notice that my perception around myself was changing. Like I was starting to find things that I could like about myself, which was huge for me, because at that stage, I didn't like anything about myself. I actually hated myself. So to find small things that I liked about myself, that was a massive win. And it was starting to open my heart up to being able to love myself. Like I wasn't there. Like I was miles away from loving myself, but I was inching closer towards being able to like myself, which was where it all began for me.
Okay, so I want to talk about something a little controversial, because if I'm completely honest, it has been a part of my journey, and I know actually that it's been a part of yours. And that is making more surface level changes to your body, to your avatar vehicle, to help you to free parts of yourself and heal insecurities and areas where you feel limited in your self-expression.
Totally. Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Well, for me, look how heavily tattooed I am.
Exactly.
So
that's where it's really been present for me in witnessing you, is that you've healed in a way through getting tattooed.
Yeah. So people don't realize that when you're really insecure and you have really low self-worth, when you get tattooed, you're adding something to your avatar, to your outer shell, to your body that impacts your self-worth.
And my whole self-image.
My self-worth would raise after getting tattooed. I'd feel good about myself. I felt like I was making choices and I was taking control of my body and I was putting things on my body that resonated with me. And I did. I raised my self-worth through getting tattooed. It was one of the things that really supported me growing up. It also became an armor, though. It became an armor of protecting myself, of shielding myself, of keeping my heart closed. You know, over time, I had to work through that as well. But when I was young, as a teenager, getting tattooed started to raise my self-worth.
Can you clarify what you mean by that? Because I'm sure someone's listening and wondering, what do you mean that it became an armor for you?
Well, I've spoken about this before. Like growing up in West Auckland, everyone was in a crew, and you could understand these crews as like street gangs. And these street gangs would evolve as people grew up to people would join real gangs and become, you know, patched and different clubs. So as a kid growing up, navigating the streets, fighting was a big part of my reality as a teenager. There was, you know, crews on crews. There was always fighting. There was always things happening. And there was a lot of violence that happened in that neighborhood. And that's just the way we grew up. So getting heavily tattooed became an armor for me. Like, get back. Don't with me. You know what I mean?
Self-protection.
Self-protection.
To appear tougher and stronger?
Exactly. Because on the inside, I felt insecure. I felt like I wasn't strong.
But how was that in the way? You said eventually it became something that you had to kind of work through and dismantle in a way. That's what I was getting from you. And it sounds like, when I'm just first listening to this, that would raise your self-worth and not be an issue.
Yeah, it was based in ego. It was based in edging God out. So it wasn't opening my heart. It was keeping those walls, you know, very much there.
Creating separation.
Exactly. So how it unfolded is being in a relationship. Those walls don't work in a relationship. When you're perceiving your own emotions as weakness and you're not okay to be vulnerable and to speak about how you're feeling, that limits your capacity to love someone and let love in. So that was something that I experienced that I had to work on in our relationship. You know, there's things that can work in one area of your life that can become your superpower, but those very things in another area of your life is what can cause something to fail. So we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, it's wild to look back, because when I met you, you were so different and you had major walls up.
Yeah.
And I remember for at least, I think it was 5 to 7 years of our relationship, I can't remember the exact time, you didn't cry once.
No, I never cried.
You never expressed any strong emotion. And I remember that I was very emotional and expressive.
You were so emotional.
And I would get really confused and quite frustrated because I felt like you weren't letting me in.
You couldn't feel me. You were
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like an inauthentic relationship. And I persevered because on some level I could feel your heart and your goodness. But it was not easy to feel intimate, like to feel deeply connected, heart to heart, soul to soul.
Definitely.
Because you weren't letting me in.
I wasn't open. And the reason I wasn't open is because there was so much pain there. So if I was to open my heart, that means I had to feel all of the pain that I had suppressed. And there was a lot of pain that I had to work through.
And for anyone listening who is going through this or has a partner who's going through it or someone that you love, I also want to mention that when I confronted you about that possibility at that time, you denied it. You were like, back off, leave me alone. I don't feel anything about this. Why are you probing and trying to get a reaction out of me?
Yeah,
well, you were very defensive.
Yeah, I was in the fight response. I'd been suppressing it my whole life. So at that point in time, it was just blocked off. It was like, I don't go there.
And then what helped? Because from my perspective, I do think, not to toot my own horn, but a little bit, I think one of the things that helped you is that I was very gentle and loving and a safe space.
Yeah, well, we started this journey together of personal development. This is how it all started. This is how we formed our company.
Yeah.
And back then, 18 years ago, when we were starting this journey, it was you that helped me so much, for sure. And then as we started growing and evolving and stepping into personal development, layer by layer by layer, I'd start to understand myself on a deeper level. And by the time we found breathwork, my heart was ready to open. So, that was the game changer. Breathwork really did change everything for me because I was able to process my emotions.
That was the turning point.
That was the turning point. Nothing gave me access to processing my emotions and releasing all that pain like breathwork did. And that's why I became so passionate about it. And to this day, it's still one of my favorite things to do is to support people in processing unexpressed emotions and pain and working through trauma. Like, I am obsessed with it. I love it. And I know you do too. I want to rewind and go back to the masks that you were wearing, the things that actually helped you to find confidence and to raise your self-worth, that were like the outer things that you were doing. So I'm not talking about the inner work. I'm talking about the things like me getting tattooed. What was yours?
Well, I really wanted to talk about this because it's so easy to just say, oh, it's all inner work. Like, do the meditations and the breath work and yada, yada, and free yourself and love yourself as you are. But the truth, let's talk about the truth. The truth is, yes, the inner work has helped me immensely. I would not be where I am without it. I rely on it. I turn to it day in and day out to keep me aligned. And I had really crooked teeth. And I remember at the time, it was such an insecurity for me. As I said, I couldn't go anywhere and be in conversation with anyone without thinking about it.
Yeah, you were always aware of it.
So aware of it. It was in the way, of me feeling relaxed and free. So I went to a dentist, an orthodontist, and I got a consultation. I actually went to multiple, and the feedback that I got was that braces wouldn't actually help because of the way that my teeth were. Like, I had really little teeth and they were all crooked, and I had, it was just a whole thing. And I remember I made a really radical, bold decision. In hindsight, was it the best thing to do? No, but it was the resources and the awareness I had at the time. And so I went with it. And I saved $5,000 and we went to India and I got all of my front teeth crowned.
Yeah, well, we didn't go to India for that purpose. That was just something that kind of fell into place
along the
path of going to India. We really went to India for our own self-exploration and to be immersed in a new culture and to discover a whole new way of being. And we did that. And along that path, you got your...
And that was at the end of the time in India. We were there for a few months, and at the end, I did that. So I felt an immediate change from changing my teeth. And also, for anyone listening who's getting any ideas about going to India, please don't, because that dental work was so bad and ended up costing me a whole lot more to fix the work that I got done there.
Yeah.
But I want to be real here and say that my confidence did take a turn for the better after I got my teeth done.
Yeah, and at that time, you didn't know that the work was bad. You would find that out later through other dentists here in LA. And
when my teeth started falling out in random moments in public. Okay, I can't even believe that I'm talking about this right now. I've never spoken about this publicly. And I think that is also testament to my self-worth that I embody now, because I even remember at the time when I made that decision to get that dental work done, and I was so excited about it and felt so free. And then I remember I got a job doing public speaking, and I was running these little women's circles and workshops. And in the middle of multiple workshops, I would have a front tooth blow off. Like, it would be my breath when I'm speaking that would just blow a front tooth off. And I remember being utterly mortified, like fetal position, panic attack.
It was your worst nightmare.
It was my worst nightmare. And it wasn't the kind of thing where I could laugh and be like, oh, I've got a crown. My tooth came off. Sorry, everyone. Got to go. It would be like, they cannot know because this is my dark secret.
So you'd try and hide it.
I would try to hide it. I was so self-conscious about it. I had so much shame. And I didn't tell anyone that I got the dental work done because I was so embarrassed. And I thought that it meant something about me. I think this is also such an important point to bring up. You are not your body.
Yeah.
And I remember you would say this to me, Hella, you're not your teeth, you're not your skin, you're not your body, you're not how you look, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, I hear the words, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
I am my flesh. And if I don't look my best, then I'm going to get rejected and it means I'm unworthy and unlovable. It was way too merged together and I was so identified with this flesh suit. So having the dental stuff, I thought that that meant that there was something severely wrong with me.
Yeah, which is
I
another
separate myself
really
from that.
common limiting belief system that a lot of people have. There's something wrong.
Exactly. And then fast forward, I remember over the years seeing certain people online who would post about having crowns and having them just fall off. Like people in LA that I know, and they'd just laugh about it.
They'd make fun of
and
themselves.
be like, ha ha ha, look, like my crown came off, how wild. And I remember seeing them and being like, how are they that free? Like, they don't make this mean anything about their lovability or self-worth. It's just a tooth. They're not embarrassed about even the fact that they have a fake tooth. They don't care. So that was a teaching like, oh, you can separate your sense of self-worth from your flesh suit.
Totally, which takes a lot of work though, to realize that you are not your body. Like you have a body, you live in a body, but you are not your body.
Yeah, another one that was huge for me on that was I would get so identified with having breakouts. And if I had a breakout, I remember I would be like, I'm not leaving the house. My skin is breaking out. I am not going out. And I also recall when we started working with more high profile people, like people that you see on TV, people that are on billboards, whatever, that are some of the most gorgeous, poppin', amazing people. You rock up, do a session, they've got breakouts and they don't care.
Well, yeah, I remember.
A face covered in pimple patches.
Totally. I remember like when we first started working with celebrities here in LA, we'd go to their houses and exactly like you said, we'd rock up, they'd have no makeup on, they might have some pimples, be in their pajamas, whatever. They were just comfortable.
Hair in a messy bun, wearing stained track pants.
Yeah, they were super just comfortable. And
it
was not what you thought. We were like, damn, okay, cool. They're just like
rocking
out.
They're like that. They're normal. Like they have those moments too. Like that can be a normal part of being human.
Yeah.
We don't need to shame and reject those parts of ourselves when we're less than perfect.
We can love those parts of ourselves, which is the work. I know for me, I felt unlovable because a big part of it was dad left. And because dad left, I internalized that as I'm not lovable because the evidence was right there for me. If I was lovable, if I was worthy of love, then dad would have stayed around. He would have been there for me and mum. And the fact that he chose to leave, the meaning that I made from that was I'm not worthy of love.
I remember watching that movie, the documentary, I Am Not Your Guru, with Tony Robbins. And one of the questions that he asks to a participant in that film is, whose love did you crave the most?
Yeah.
And I've always found it really interesting how with clients and with ourselves, with humans, someone can say something to you and it just washes off you. It doesn't affect you at all.
It doesn't resonate.
But if a specific person does that thing or says that thing or kind of rejects you or pulls their love away, right? They withdraw that love and affection. It can hurt so deep that it's like an existential rejection.
So true.
And so for you, whose love did you crave the most?
Well, mum was already so loving, and encouraging. So I had that. But I didn't have dad's love. Dad never really expressed his emotions and his feelings. I didn't see that side of him. I just saw him masking and, using different coping mechanisms to deal with how he was feeling. So I didn't really have or feel that love from Dad. So that's what I craved the most. And
like
then
more of that softer, connected side.
Not necessarily a softer, connected side, just more of Dad's love.
And if you were to tune into it and go, okay, how would you have wanted that love?
I think I would have wanted Dad to tell me that I was good enough and that I've got this, and to cheer me on and to speak life into me.
This is really powerful for everyone listening, to get curious about whose love you've craved the most and how would you want to experience that love.
So that was ultimately something that I had to do for myself, right?
Boom, exactly.
I had to take that journey of practicing self-love by speaking life into myself. So Dad wasn't there to do that for me. Guess what? Now that's on me. I have to show up for me. I have to be the one to speak life into me. I have to be the one to encourage me. I have to be the one to, allow myself to move through all of this pain and everything that I'm feeling. It's on me. And that's, the journey that we took. I want to hear from you though, because you spoke about getting your teeth done.
Yeah.
That raised your self-worth, even though it would lead to having to spend more money and to repair the dental work. At that time, it raised your self-worth. Was there other things that supported you? Because I know you've spoken about makeup.
Okay, I want to take a bit of a pivot here, but it's connected to the story because our self-worth manifests in so many different ways, right? And another area for me where I had low self-worth was financially. And I remember that I would pride myself on being humble and kind of taking the crumbs, right? So let's say if I could have whatever I wanted, the old me would be like, it's okay. I don't need it. You take it. I don't need it. So no big deal. And I wouldn't claim what I actually wanted. It would even show up in the littlest things, like we would go to a cafe or a restaurant and people would be ordering and it would be like, what do you want, Hella? And instead of checking in and owning what I wanted, I'd be like, I'll just get what you're having. There was no connection to what I wanted, and I was lacking the confidence to really claim it, which meant when it came to money, I would be like, I don't need it, neither here nor there. And I wouldn't show up in a more passionate or driven or aggressive way to create abundance for myself because I was too identified with being humble to be liked. So fast forward to how this relates to my relationship with money. One of the things that I've noticed is that over the years, I've had these different opportunities come up to invest in myself or to pay more money for things. And every time I've done that, it's expanded my sense of self-worth as well as my standards to varying degrees. So it began with things like us getting a bigger apartment and paying a little bit more rent. And then it would go into the types of clothing that I would wear. And instead of looking at people wearing certain clothes and being like, oh, I couldn't wear that, or I can't afford that, or that's too expensive, I started to tap more into a feeling state. And I would invest in raising my vibration by choosing things that felt elevated and good and trying on that feeling and then acclimatizing to it and normalizing it. So, people will say things like, if you want a new car, go and hire it or sit in that car. If you want to get a nicer house, go try stay in a house like that as an Airbnb. Experience it, get used to it, normalize it. Invest in it and see how it feels. I remember when we first went on a business class flight, that was another defining moment where I was like, now I get it. I used to judge that and think that was a waste of money. And now I understand it's about the efficiency, the comfort, the quick recovery when you get off the plane. It's like you calibrate to new levels of experiences and a higher vibration. And when you normalize it, your self-worth calibrates to that being your new normal.
Yeah. Well, when you have low self-worth, for most people, they can't justify spending that much money on themselves because fundamentally they believe unconsciously, right? This might not be conscious, but they believe they're not worthy, that they're not deserving of that. So they hold back in doing that. So to practice investing in yourself and spending money on the things that are going to elevate you, and like you said, they're going to support you to grow and evolve and step into the best version of yourself, that is a practice of raising your self-worth and raising your standards.
Exactly.
So that's something that we've practiced a lot in our relationship over the last 18 years. And to be honest, we haven't stopped.
No.
We just continuously grow and step into new levels of that.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a story that, again, I've never shared publicly. And I know that probably someone's going to judge, but I don't care because it happened to me, it inspired me, and it helped me. So hopefully it will inspire someone else. I told the story about getting my teeth done, and I paid $5,000 for my teeth to get done. And then my teeth started falling out. And then I also went to dentists in New Zealand, in America, while we were traveling through Europe because my teeth kept falling out, these crowns. And every single dentist that I would go to would say, "I'm so sorry that this happened to you." And I remember feeling so much shame and like there was something broken about me. Like, oh, I'm damaged goods now. It's this thing. And people are like, "Poor you, broken girl." And I was like, no, I need to turn this around. And we've told the story before about how we lived with Jake Paul when we came to LA. And I remember one time, one of my crowns fell out. And I reached this breaking point where I was like, I am done with this identity. I'm done with dealing with this problem. And I'm ready to come up with a solution. So there may be a time where something that is making you feel crap about yourself, it's expired. You're done with it. And that was what happened for me. And instead of going to the cheapest dentist I could find, I was like, I want Jake's dentist. I want to find out who is a dentist that they recommend. Maybe it's not his dentist. Maybe it's someone else that they can recommend. I want the best. That's what I'm choosing today.
So you went from like trying to save the most amount of money by, we were in India and you're like, if I get it done here, I can save all of this money, which, I just talked about, like when you have low self-worth, you don't want to spend that much money on yourself. So that's where you were at. And then moving forward into a place where, no, I actually want the best.
I want the best. And it wasn't about I want to spend the most amount of money. It was I want to feel safe and taken care of because I deserve that. And I love myself enough to figure out whatever I need to do to ensure that I'm healthy and I'm taken care of.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Shout out to our dentist here in LA. He's
a
boss.
He is. And life-changing. So I went to see him. And prior to that experience, I would get panic attacks going to the dentist because they would say these things and it would be painful and all that. And then this experience was so different. He was so kind. He was laughing. He was really optimistic. He looked at all my teeth and he was like, I've got you.
Yeah.
This is my passion to do.
And his whole team are high performers and so dialed in and so passionate about what they do.
And they just saw it as an opportunity to contribute to improving my life. They were all excited about it and they were like, let's go. This is going to be such a great transformation. And I left that first appointment and I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm choosing this. I'm worthy of this. I'm going to do it. Again, fast forward, making a long story short here. To get my teeth redone, it went from the 5K, initial experience. To get them redone, it was 50K. And I remember the morning where we had 50 grand in our account, like maybe 53 grand or something like that, 52, I don't know. It was close to like, that's it. That's all our savings. And I remember the morning where I was going to pay for the full treatment. And I was freaking out. And I was like, is this a really bad idea? Like, why am I doing this? Is this terrible money management? I'm spending all of our savings, not just my savings. I'm spending your savings on my teeth. And then when I was getting ready to go to the appointment that morning, I went on Instagram and was scrolling, and one of our friends from Dubai had just posted. Okay, so he lives in Dubai and is from New Zealand. So same origin, which was exactly what I needed to see on that particular day. And he was like, just got my new $100,000 pinky ring. So excited.
Okay.
A pinky ring. And it was double the price of my teeth. And I saw that and I was like, he's from New Zealand. He's investing in himself. Is that a necessity? Absolutely not. He is just doing his thing and living his life. Why am I capping myself and acting like I'm spending all the money I'm ever going to make? There's plenty more to come. And I remember this affirmation that came from a book. I think it's called Happy Pocket Full of Money or something like that. That is definitely not the title, but along those lines. And the affirmation was, there's plenty more where that came from.
Yeah.
And in that moment, when I saw him with his $100,000 pinky ring, I was like, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
There's plenty more where that came from. I'm going to go and get my teeth done, and then I'm just going to make more money.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened, because you spent that money, and then fast forward, we got some of the biggest contracts that we had ever got in the US, which enabled us to move here, to live here, to work here and do our thing. And it's like, spend money to make money, you know?
And my confidence went way up again.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just wanted to share that story to say sometimes the things that you think you're unworthy of or that are such a big deal, to someone else, it's nothing.
Absolutely nothing, yeah.
So
I've had a different relationship around money my whole life. So I said that I've always had like low self-worth growing up. That's something that I really struggled with. But I always had this empowering way of thinking about money. So we didn't grow up with much money. You know, after dad left, it's just me and mum. We're just doing our thing. Mum's working different jobs to be able to provide and put food on the table. So resources, money, it's limited. Like I can't go out and, you know, get new shoes or do the types of things that my friends and peers were doing when I was a young kid, just because we didn't have that money. But I always dreamed of a life where money wouldn't be an issue, where I would create this life for myself, where I would be abundantly supported by the universe and money would just flow to me. So as a little kid, I'm thinking like this. I'm thinking like I'm going to grow up and I'm going to create a life where money's not going to be a thing. I'm just going to attract it. I'm going to make it happen. I have no idea how it's going to happen or what I'm going to do, but I'm starting to imprint on my environment. I'm starting to call things in. I'm starting to magnetize, you know, as a little kid. So that's how I would internally feel about money. Even though I didn't have the experience of having money, I was starting to feel wealthy as a kid. And when I was a teenager looking to pursue a career in the arts and tattooing, becoming a tattoo artist, I knew that that would eventually lead me to financial freedom, which it did. You know, when I became a tattoo artist, I was earning more money than any of my peers. Back then, you know, 20 years ago, I was charging $150 per hour, and that's what I was getting paid on the hour. So money...
And that was at a time when I was earning $10 an hour.
Exactly. So money was just coming in for me and I was attracting it and I felt worthy of receiving it. So it's really interesting that I felt worthy of receiving money, but receiving love, that felt hard for me. That felt difficult. That was challenging. That was something I had to work through. But the money thing has always been something that I felt worthy of creating and receiving. And then our life shows we've been on this path of investing in ourselves. It's something that we've continuously done and we haven't stopped. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're successful is because we don't allow money to be a block. If we don't have money, We know that we're going to make it, we're going to create it because we feel worthy of receiving it. Just like you said, we only had 50K saved up and we were going to spend all of that on your teeth, and we did. And then we go on to make, exponentially way more money because we're continuously investing in our next level, and we don't allow money to be the block. It's easy for people to think that, it's easy for you to say because you've got money, but when you don't have money and you still think like that and you still feel worthy of creating your dreams into reality, and you're going to find a way and you're going to make it happen, even though you don't have the resources or the money in your bank. That's how we live, and that's what we've always done. And it's supported us to make a lot of money. That mindset is so valuable, and it's something that is really important if you're looking to feel free when it comes to creating financial wealth.
One thing that we've both seen a lot as well is it's one thing to feel worthy of making money. It's another thing to feel worthy of making money on your own terms.
And it's another thing to feel worthy of making money for your services, for your art, for what you offer to the world.
Right, your joy, your passion.
Exactly. It's really easy to get a paycheck when you're working for someone else and be like, I deserve more. I should get a raise. But when you start to put your gifts out there to the world, it's really, really vulnerable. And then what happens to most people is they aim really low. Like, they have a really low price point of what they're charging when they're putting their services out there, because they don't feel worthy to receive more, which is a process that you have to grow into as an entrepreneur who's providing value and service to the world. You don't just start out earning lots of money. You have to grow into that, and that's the process of becoming an entrepreneur. That's a part of the path that we all have to go through.
There's another part of this too, that is how you show up in the work that you do that connects to your self-worth, because there are a lot of people who have very low standards and it shows up in their work, and they're kind of happy or settling for that bare minimum exchange. Whereas what I find is people who have high self-worth also have high expectations of themselves. Is that always fun? No. Sometimes having really high self-worth means having such high standards that you suffer more because you demand more. And I do see that with you and I. And if we're really real about it, we're hard on ourselves sometimes from a place of love.
Yeah, that's the difference though. It's not coming from I'm not enough anymore. It's not coming from I'm not worthy. It's not coming from something's wrong with me. It used to be fueled by that. Now it's fueled by self-love. It's knowing what we're capable of. It's knowing that we can step into our full potential in this lifetime. It's knowing that we have the opportunity to step in to our full potential. It's coming from inspiration. It's coming from motivation. It's coming from being tapped into something so much bigger than us.
Yeah, exactly.
Driving us forward, saying, this is what you need to do. Keep moving forward. Keep going. You've got this.
And exactly. And this is where it becomes a more spiritual conversation, because I think the way that you and I see our lives now and our path is that we are extensions of source energy. We are here to serve.
Yeah.
And God, source, the universe expresses through us, which means that we're here on an assignment.
Exactly.
And it's humble because it's like, I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve God's mission.
Exactly. And it's like, the more I serve, the more abundant I am. And we don't do this to get money. We do this because it's our divine assignment. But the law of the universe, the more you serve, the more you give of yourself, the more you show up and you support others, you will be abundantly supported for your service. Now that may come in the form of money, or it may come in the form of opportunities, synchronicity, magic, flow. There's many ways that the universe provides. But the more you get out of your own way and you show up in service to humanity, then yes, you will be abundantly provided for. And that's what we've found. That's been our direct experience. And we've trained so many other facilitators now who have created successful businesses, and they're out there in the world doing something that they're passionate about, making a difference, like actually supporting their community to make positive changes. They're doing it and they're receiving abundantly for their work. And so they should, because it requires so much inner work. It requires you to dedicate your life to this. This isn't a 9-to-5 job where you can just clock off. No, you're going to have to work exponentially harder. You're going to have to put more hours in. You're going to have to dedicate your life to, the mission. You get to do it in a way that's fun and inspiring and uplifting, but it requires a different level of commitment to yourself and to your goals and your vision of what you're here to do in this lifetime. It's a totally different way of living and thinking and operating in the world.
Well, along with what you're saying, something that really kind of blew my mind and flipped upside down everything that I believe about self-worth was when one of my mentors spoke to me about the idea of being deserving of something, and that our ideas of what makes us deserving are made up. What makes someone deserving of being a billionaire versus being broke? What makes someone deserving of a miracle versus not having a miracle? A Course in Miracles also talks about this. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. We make these rules up in our mind to justify what we let in. If you transform your idea of what you're worthy and deserving of, you start to open the floodgates for the divine to move through your life and bless you and bring you opportunities to create and to serve and to be inspired. And I know that for some people, they might think, who am I to think that God wants to bless me or work through my life? Exactly.
Who am I not to?
Who are you not to? And if it's a choice, why would you not choose to live your life like that when it can open up so much beauty and love and connection and abundance for you? It can allow you to do good. It can inspire you. And people might think, oh, that's really big-headed of you to think that you're the chosen one by God. We're all chosen, but we block the blessings. So this is a call for everyone listening to wake up and get off those limiting stories and start going after what you deep down actually want. Because the truth is, life is happening.
Yeah.
Days are passing by, and we're missing out when we hold back and believe in these old, outdated stories about what's possible. If no one in your family has ever been a millionaire, if no one in your family has ever been outspoken or taken up space, if no one in your peer group is doing anything ultra creative, that has nothing to do with you. You are your own unique specimen here to do your own unique thing. So I hope that this whole conversation has reminded people of that.
Well, I love what you said about we're all chosen. Because when you have low self-worth, you don't think like that. You don't think that you're chosen by God to be here on this earth to contribute and to make a difference in your own unique way.
And we over-identify with hierarchy, putting people on a pedestal as if they're somehow holier, more superior, more gifted, more privileged. Those people have opened the tap to be a conduit for something.
Yeah. Well, I want to say the thing that you're struggling with right now is a part of your divine assignment. And when you practice investing your time, energy, and money to solve that problem, to work on yourself, to heal that part of your life, then you get to pay that forward and gift that to others. Just like we're here now talking about how we were able to raise our self-worth. When we were struggling with that years ago, we could never imagine that we'd be sitting here now talking about it from a place of feeling free within ourselves, because that was not our lived experience. And now that we're here, we've done the work, we can share it, we can pay it forward. And we hope that someone tuning in to this can find value in this conversation. And each and every single one of you have your own unique voice, the things that you're passionate about, the things that you should talk about because it's a part of your story. And if you talk about your story and you share it with other people, it's going to add value because you are valuable, because you are worthy. Just by being here on this planet, you're alive, you're worthy. It's not in what you do, it's in who you are. And whatever you want to create is not only possible, it's your birthright from the perspective of I am worthy, I am chosen, which we all are. And like you said, you're the only one that can block your blessings. You're the only one that can block your blessings. So raising your self-worth is an obligation to your younger self. It's an obligation to the you of now, and it's an obligation to your future self to step in and claim what you were born to create.
Ooh. Are we feeling it? I hope that you're all feeling this inspiration. I am feeling it being in the room. The energy is palpable. I think we're about to close out this conversation. So I want to invite you, and then I'll share about one thing that you're currently focused on in your life with regards to your self-worth. Like, where are you currently expanding? Let's talk about it.
I'm currently expanding and pushing my physical body to access my full potential. So I'm doing that in my workouts. I'm challenging myself in my workouts to work out in a way that feels difficult, uncomfortable, and I'm lifting more weights. I'm pushing myself with my cardio. If I'm training boxing, I'm trying to go full out. I'm just taking it there and I'm going all in. Same with my nutrition. I'm really dialing in and I'm being more intentional around what I'm putting into my body. I'm tracking my calories and I'm just looking at what I'm putting into my body and how that's making me feel, which is more important than anything. It's like, how is this food making me feel? Just because something's healthy doesn't mean that it's making me feel good. So I'm really paying attention to when I eat food, how is it making me feel? I'm trying to fuel my physical vehicle with the best food that I have available to me. And I'm being intentional and deliberate about that. And all of that is a part of me practicing self-love and enjoying the process. So
love that.
That's what I'm doing. And then also with my creativity, I'm about to record a new album. I'm about to flex my creativity and push myself to break through new boundaries when it comes to self-expression. So those are the two areas that I'm focused on at the moment, which are really exciting me.
I am really loving seeing this whole journey for you, and it really inspires me. And it reminds me of one thing which I heard someone say, and it was about this idea of having cheat meals and cheat days.
Like putting crappy food into
eating crap and being like, treat yourself, and that mindset, and flipping it on its head and going, if you really loved yourself and you were treating your body like a temple, wouldn't a day of even more love mean even more nourishment and being even more devoted to your body and your well-being, not trashing it? In the same way that if you were like, oh, I'm so grateful to have this amazing Lamborghini, you wouldn't go out on that day of gratitude and put the worst fuel in it and expect it to run well. You just wouldn't do that. So I found that really powerful, and I'm seeing this through you, that self-worth can be experienced as a daily embodiment practice. And then for me, what I'm experiencing right now is this conversation that's happening with the field. Okay, so this is more of a spiritual perspective, I suppose. Since we moved to this house, every day I've been waking up and connecting with nature and feeling awe and gratitude. And it's like a mirror that's reminding me, hey, look what you're capable of creating. Look how powerful you are. Receive that. Receive it. Let it in. The thing that I've found over the years is that even though I know how to manifest and I know that it's real, I know that it works, I can go into these unconscious trance-like moments, we all do it, where we forget that power, or we feel like an imposter that got lucky. Like, oh, there's a glitch. Like, I somehow got lucky, I struck gold, but actually I'm not that. And the field can remind you that you are that and you are worthy, and it is flowing through you. So stay awake and keep going. So what I'm channeling that into is to know every day that I am worthy and these blessings have come into my life for a reason, not by mistake. And when I know that and I walk with conviction, being like, this isn't just luck, I created this. Then when I attract more good things, I feel even more comfortable and calibrated to receive them, because we've spoken about this before. Sometimes when a blessing shows up, you can fumble it if you feel unworthy.
Yeah, you can self-sabotage.
Yes, and I've seen this with even things like working with really amazing, powerful, influential people. If I'm having a crappy day and I've forgotten that I'm worthy and I'm a creator, I can be like, I can't do this. Who am I? Who am I to be helping them?
You can revert back to those limiting narratives, those limiting beliefs.
Yeah. So at the moment, it's like a feedback loop. And I'm just marinating in the soup of like, you're amazing, you're worthy. Look at how creative you are. Take the blessings in. See, this is natural for you. Easy. You've got this. All the blessings that come my way are meant for me. It's the deserving thing. Like, ditch this idea of what it means to be deserving of an extraordinary life and just let it happen. And like ride the wave, be on the journey of it and know it's happening because it's meant to happen. So trust that and receive it fully.
Yeah, that's only because of all the work that you've been putting in though.
Exactly.
So if you're not putting in any work, you can't just expect things to change.
It doesn't just come on a silver platter. That's
No.
such an important point. You put in work.
You put in the work, you claim what you want, you go after it, you set your intentions, you surrender your intentions, and you allow the universe to work through you to make it happen for the highest good.
Yeah.
And that's what I see you doing. So I'm super excited to see what you will create next through that.
Likewise, because it's together.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah.
I have loved this conversation and I hope that all of you listening have as well. If you enjoyed it and if you think someone that you know would benefit from hearing a reminder that they are powerful and they are worthy and there is so much more available in life for them to claim and grab unapologetically, please make sure that you share this podcast.
If you've watched this episode and you've found value in it and you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We would love that. We're sending you lots of love and we're leaving you with a reminder that you are inherently worthy because you are here. And so it is.
And so it is. We'll see you on the next episode.
Peace.